I'd like to bring on Casey, John, and Rahul. So I noticed that you guys were on the panel a little bit earlier, and I'd like to welcome, so really interesting panel that we have here now. And so Rahul and John Casey. So Casey, the Google background, the Bessemer, so investment, search, one of the, two of the probably the best known companies in anyone who's paying attention to anything. I'm going to let you spend a little bit of time introducing yourself and what you do, because I was trying to understand it a little bit more, but failed. John and Rahul, I know you guys are either developing companies or working for incredibly fast-growing companies, which is pretty incredible. So I'll let you spend a little bit of time introducing yourselves and talk about the topic at hand today. But you know, the idea as well is from the last topic, you saw where we were going, whether it was the adoption, sovereign control, investments, a little bit of questions on predictions of whether it's Bitcoin, Ethereum. Touch on that topic as well a little bit. So we just, you know, there's a lot of burning questions here. So I'm going to leave you to it here. Thank you very much for joining us. I'll pop in about 20 minutes. So when you see me, you know, we're getting close to that time. And if we have questions, we'll address those. Thank you. Casey?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the introduction, Karam. Sure. So I'll give a really brief intro, but I definitely don't want to monopolize the time. I think I don't even know actually how much time we have, maybe 30 minutes. So with that, my name is Casey. I work at Google as an engineer on a research team called the System Research Team. Pretty self-explanatory. Just got a nice little reorg and got that really clear name, which I like. And then I also work at Bessemer a few days a week, helping them invest in crypto and deep tech in general, like artificial intelligence, deep learning, more frontier tech. And my background is in computer engineering. My master's is in computer science, focused on supervised learning at the time. And yeah, that's me. So with that, I'll let maybe John Cole go first and give his bio and then pass it on to Rahul.
Thanks, Casey. So I've been an investor in crypto for a little over 3 years now. Currently with a firm called Galaxy Digital. Some of you may know it as Mike Novogratz's firm. We're really trying to be kind of that connective tissue between the more traditional financial world of Wall Street and you know, the nascent world of crypto. Before that, used to be a bond trader. Not as exciting as my current life, as you can imagine. I love what I do, and I consider myself one of the few lucky ones to be able to do this full time. And so that's I guess that's enough about me, but I'll let Rahul tell us more about himself.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Casey. Hey everyone, I'm Rahul. I'm the co-founder and CTO of TRM. Basically, we build software that helps prevent money laundering and fraud for cryptocurrencies. So we work with governments, we work with financial institutions to basically help them comply with the law, which is basically saying, hey, we don't want ransomware, human trafficking, terrorism financing. We don't want those sort of activities to sort of take over the crypto network. And so that's sort of how we help these institutions prevent money laundering from those means. My story with crypto kind of started, you know, as a nerd, sort of really fascinated by the concept of, you know, cryptographic security, and then moved slightly into investing, and then finally decided to build a career in it. So I'm really excited to be here and share some thoughts with everyone.
Awesome. All right. Well, okay, we can get started with what Karam was kind of alluding to around where we are and all that. And maybe a question to encapsulate that would be a little little play or a little imaginary situation where if somebody came to you who wasn't in crypto at all, and they're like, why should I work in this industry? Like, where is it today? And why would 2020 be the right time to get involved? Maybe we can start with both of yours perspective of like what your pitch would be given kind of the last 7 years of this market.
So, all right, so I could start off. First, my pitch to you, if you're a software engineer and you're in the audience, quit your job right now and find a crypto startup to join. I've been trying to tell this to every software engineer in my life. It's a no-brainer. You are going to face a downside profile that is very similar to any early stage startup you will find, just in the broader software arena. And an upside profile that has just generational ability to it. So just drop what you're doing and look, if it doesn't work out, no one in the old software world, no one is going to make fun of you for the move that you've made. And so it's a very, very comparable downside scenario, but a completely markedly different upside scenario. And so that's just more broadly, you should do it. Take my word for it. Just look into it, spend some time, get involved. Everyone in my life, I've tried to sell them on this. More specifically, there are a few growth areas that you probably want to tie yourself into. One of them, and that's why you're going to want to take the contact info of Rahul here, because he's one of these growth areas. As our space continues to expand, as there's more activity on chain, digesting that activity, understanding what it means, and helping people, businesses, many different types of businesses, just get comfortable with what's happening. They're going to need that type of compliance software. They're going to need to know that they're not interfacing with entities that might get them in trouble. And so companies like TRM, you may have heard of companies like Chainalysis, they're providing a very useful service that has this industry-wide tailwind behind it. And so that's clearly one of the areas you can attach yourself to if you find that particular niche intriguing. And then thirdly, like people mentioned it before, I'm going to talk about DeFi, but DeFi is kind of a broad thing. If you want to get into it specifically, there's still areas in it that are kind of underexplored. Right now, the way DeFi is constructed, a lot of it is still, it's very crypto native, it's very niche-y. And so if you want to build a consumer product that'll make DeFi more accessible to people like yourselves who are coming from or not as crypto native, you don't have that insight, that's a good area to break into. And then there's just these common problems that DeFi kind of still suffers from. We don't know who our counterparties are kind of by design, so we can't really credit score them. So there's a number of people working on interesting credit scoring solutions in DeFi. That's a really intriguing problem. But I think that's enough talking from mine. I'll let Rahul provide an answer on that as well, because I think this is a really interesting question.
Yeah, no, John, couldn't agree with you more on some of those points. I think the reason I think crypto is incredibly exciting is really two reasons. One, it's rarely that you get to work on a technology that's a fundamental platform shift that's going to sort of ripple, not 1 year from now, 5 years from now, but like 50 years from now and 100 years from now, right? So if you kind of think about sort of significant platform shifts, which is like silicon getting cheaper, mobile computing, internet, like these are platform shifts that, are playing out over 20, 50, 100 years and going to change sort of the shape of humanity in a lot of ways. I think crypto, in whatever form it takes, right, going forward, is going to be one of those trends. And you can sort of play, and everything in life has an S-curve, right? And I think, you can play on sort of the tail end of the S-curve, on mobile or some of these things, or you can sort of start at the early sort of hypergrowth phase of the S-curve. And I think that's where crypto is today. So that's number one, just the opportunity to work in an industry that's going to have a lasting impact and it's just getting started. The sort of corollary from that is if you're an engineer, or if you're an innovator or builder, you actually have a lot of sort of white space to go build what you want to build and invent what needs to be invented for things to be successful, right? So, you know, when internet came about, there were like 4 different IP protocols before IP was selected, right? And we're sort of going through the same sort of iterations with the blockchains and the DeFi protocols, right? People are inventing what needs to be invented in order for things to like find product market fit. And it's a lot more exciting than trying to compete against Amazon in the e-commerce space with another sort of Etsy shop or another, you know, e-commerce place. It's super crowded, super competitive. It can be really successful, but it's a different kind of innovation. And so if you're excited about sort of white space where you can sort of just innovate and sort of be on the frontier, I think crypto is one of those industries that brings together economic thought, political thought, computer science, and you kind of put all that together to invent things to be invented. So my take on it, if folks are interested.
Love
Yeah,
that.
that last point you mentioned about like the interdisciplinary nature of it, that's what really drew me into it. It's just, first it meant there's not going to be any experts, right? No one can be an expert at all these things at the same time at this stage in the industry. There's just not enough time. Right? You don't have the 10,000 hours to become an expert at all those things and then bring it into this light. And if you think about it, with the industry effectively only being 10 years old, it means that the maximum amount of time someone could have had is 10 years. That's it. There's not many industries that are like that. And so the person who is in the absolute lead, their lead is not that much bigger than yours. So that's really an interesting thing to think about. So sorry, that was a little digression there. But,
No, I think it's true. And I think something so unique about the crypto market is our sense of community. It's wild. Like other people in different industries, I'm like, so who are your internet friends? And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, yeah, like all my friends, we talk on the internet all the time. It's through Telegram or Discord or whatnot. And we've just, it's so small still. So anybody getting in, you really can just be one of those founding team members that build this entire industry from nothing. So I really echo both of what you said. What you both said. Okay, so then kind of moving on, I think one other topic that would be awesome to discuss is kind of like what are making the crypto companies successful or not. And I think to be a little bit more specific, I would love to hear from John what you're looking for in companies. And then Rahul, what gets you excited about TRM? I mean, you're so talented. You could work wherever you want. We're probably at this point, you know, we're all clearly sold on crypto, but specifically within crypto, what are you looking for? And I think I can kind of start and give my 2 cents, kind of being both like a builder and an investor. I think it varies from industry to industry, but for crypto specifically, what I'm looking for is a really strong business model. It seems that we kind of missed that in this market for many, many years. You still need to make money for your company to be profitable and at a venture scale. The use case, I'm really, really interested in picks and shovels bets, things that are foundational to crypto, of primarily because of a market issue and because it's still so young that we need to have the TAM to be large enough to build companies. And then in terms of structure, I have a slight bias towards equity, purely because I think that the token accrual models are still getting figured out. And I know that might be a contrarian thing to say right now, or maybe even the reverse. It goes in cycles, the excitement on tokens. But I still, for my side of it, being more of an engineer, it just still fully hasn't clicked for me in terms of like raising money on that structure. I get the value of them, but yeah. So I'll pause there. I don't know who wants to start, but I'd love to hear both of your thoughts.
yeah, I can take it. Look, certainly business models are foundationally important when you're investing in, whether it's a fund, traditional company, whether it's a network. They're ultimately trying to provide a useful service to someone else. They're trying to create some value and capture some of it. And so the business model is the expression of that. More specifically about like what I look for, there's a number of things. It might sound a little bit lofty, but the broadest investment thesis that I bring into this is I look for people that are solving problems that are basically vestiges of the foundational structure of a blockchain. So if you think about, let's take Ethereum, where a lot of the interesting things have been happening on. Well, Ethereum, by its design, it the current design of Ethereum, let's say, it does not allow you to have a while loop. Like you can't have persistent conditional execution on Ethereum unless you want to call your smart contracts in every block. Right? And so understanding that this is a foundational problem because it's just by the design of Ethereum, and that while loops are a pretty foundational thing for anyone who's going to build anything with software, we set out to try and solve that thing. And so one of our portfolio companies, they're building a network of bots for like to automate that, to give you the ability to have persistent execution on Ethereum. So that's clearly like there's this foundational problem that exists because of how Ethereum was constructed. If you're solving that, I want to talk to you. It doesn't have to be that problem specifically. There are 1,000 problems that are just vestiges of the design of Ethereum. You can extend that to Bitcoin, you can extend that to any other platform. Those are particularly interesting to me. I also like things that there's really no comparison for. I would much rather invest in something that doesn't exist yet. I'm looking for category defining companies, and the best way to do that is to not have the category. If you're truly going to define it, you have to create it. And so I'd much rather have to go through the somewhat difficult exercise, forcing my imagination to see how the market is created for what you're selling, than basically say, oh, so you're like that thing, but you're a better version of it. Those things don't excite me as much. And third, if you are going to be in that realm where you're basically improving upon some type of incumbent, I look for what's called counterpositioning. Counterpositioning is where your business model is such where if the incumbent tried to adopt it, they'd inherently be worse off in the short term, because any gains that would come to them from your adopting your business model would come at the expense of their existing business model. So you could think of, say, Blockbuster and Netflix. Blockbuster was a logistics company that could very easily operate a very successful DVD by mail business. And they eventually got into DVD by mail and they did it pretty well, but it took them forever to do it. Their business model was based on renting DVDs in retail stores and charging late fees when you fail to return that on time. Netflix business model was DVD by mail straight to you, no late fees ever. The investor couldn't do what Netflix did because any gains they would have made from copying Netflix would have not been actual gains for the business as a whole. They would have come away from their current pot. So their NPV would have been worse. And so that's a counterposition business model. And so if you're attacking an incumbent, I want you to tell me how your business model is counterpositioned to theirs. Because if it's not, we have a problem. The incumbent's probably going to eat your lunch at some point. So those are kind of things that I look for in companies we invest in.
That's great. That's great. I love that example of Netflix versus, and I think that thought is inspired by a book, John, but I forget which book it is.
That's right. 7 Powers, Hamilton Himmler. The only book by a consultant I'll have you read. Highly recommend it.
Awesome. How about you, Rahul?
No, I really like the way Johnny framed that. If I think about some of the big problems that need to get addressed, we think about like what we're trying to accomplish, right? With cryptos, we're trying to sort of, I guess everyone has their own sort of vision of what crypto should be and what it should do. But I think everyone can agree that we want more people to use it, right? In whatever use case that may be. And so if I look at some of like the challenges that we want there, that we need solving, it's like trust and safety, something we're working on. I think that's definitely something that needs to get solved in some capacity. It's a financial product. Financial industry is probably the most heavily regulated industry after healthcare. So there's no future where financial technology is not going to be regulated. I think, at least not in like my lifetime, right? Where you're going to have financial technology regulated. So trust and safety is going to be a core part of that. I think if you look on the sort of just purely financial side, I think there's a lot of work in the core technology. I mean, just even looking at scalability problems, right? We're looking at, the moment we have spikes in Ethereum, we have spikes in sort of stablecoin usage, and the core network sort of stops working. So people are working on layer 2 solutions, ZK rollups, Lightning Network, right, to help scale out the throughput, right? There's also just core technology challenges around like race conditions, like, you know, like just basic technology saying like, how do I know that my transaction will get executed when I say I want it executed, right? Things that we take for granted on the old world. How do we sort of give similar semantics in the new world? So I think there's a lot of core technology problems that need to be solved. There's some ancillary regulatory and environmental problems that need to be solved around trust and safety. And I think there's just like some application layer problems that need to be solved, right? So as much as we want everyone to be self-sovereign, right? The idea of everyone owning their own private keys, I think, is a little misguided. And I know that might be controversial in the space, but in terms of usability, if you want your parents to be owning their Bitcoin private key, these are the same parents that reset their password 4 times a week, right? You're not really gonna get that kind of adoption. And so there's a lot of cool businesses working on how to abstract away this idea of the private key, where you're still the sole owner, but you know, you have much more user-friendly semantics, which is whether a phrase or your phone number or, you know, some biometrics to sort of give you that same control without sort of where we are today, which is, you know, MetaMask and enter your private key or things like that. So I think those are sort of the 3 layers at which I look at it, sort of like environmental ecosystem, so trust and safety, regulation, core technology, just giving the right semantics that people can build on, and then application layer to sort of bridge the gap between like where we are today and where we want to be.
Mm-hmm. One thing I'll add to you, I totally agree with your point about, you know, kind of self-custody. Whereas I just think it's the option for self-custody that's important, not the actual act. Most people won't do it themselves. But having that ability to do that, having that eject button as the option is really important.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, we only have a few more minutes, but I think what question I would love to wrap up with is on theses. So I would love, maybe we all can make a prediction, just one, given that the year is wrapping up and we're heading into 2021. Trying to think, I mean, this could be a group activity, but what should we predict? Should we predict the next big wave, or maybe, why don't we do that? Like, if you know, if you have to look at the space, maybe it can be overhyped or underhyped. You don't get any extra points for being a contrarian. Where would you put your time, your effort, your resources, your money, whatever you want to call it? Where would you put yourself?
Well, so one thing that I don't think is getting a lot of attention, but I think will be one of the topics du jour in sometime next year, is I think there's going to emerge these Bitcoin-centric DeFi platforms, ones that everything happens in Bitcoin. You do not need exposure to another native asset. And I think part of that is going to be fueled by, I think 2021 is going to be a very ugly year with the regulators. I think it's going to be the ugliest year in just that we've seen in the last 4 years. And I think that's going to fuel people to try to go back, that like self-custody is going to get reinforced in 2021 as we enter this fight with the regulators. That's what I expect for next year.
Awesome. All right, it's etched in stone. Consider it done, John.
It's funny. You know, I think there are two mega trends I think that are really hard to ignore. I think Bitcoin getting more and more integrated into financial services that people sort of access. So you're already seeing that with like the Fold card, you know, where you're getting rewards in Bitcoin, yeah. Right? Like the moment you're going to see that just sort of getting integrated in more and more sort of usable, centralized, quote unquote, financial services, where Bitcoin is a reward, a sort of universal reward that people can earn, save, and spend in. I think that's going to be something that's super exciting for the space as people sort of build around it. And it's not like purely decentralized, that's not the vision, but it's like just treating it like an asset class that's truly universal and sort of accepted. I think it's going to be super exciting. I think the second big wave, and it's hard to understand, is it's going to be some form of stablecoins. I think the sort of the interoperability that stablecoins provide, but also are able to bridge the regulatory gap with, right? Because ultimately they are tied to the if you think about like the concerns that governments have with sort of Bitcoin or a non-fiat currency is really twofold. One is around control. So like, if you think about how governments control or exert power, it's really around force and currency economics, right? And so what they're concerned about is sort of losing that control over the economics. And I think the stablecoin bridges that gap. And sort of the second concern they have is around sort of the cryptography and sort of anonymity and things like that. And I think the stablecoin helps bridge that gap as well, since they have to be issued by central parties and ultimately cashed out to some degree. So I think it's really a super exciting time to see some products get built on top, especially around remittances. We're already seeing some exciting companies in that space. So Bitcoin getting integrated, and then stablecoins moving in stronger.
Oh, I love all of these predictions. Oh, this is great. Okay, well, we'll have to do this again next year and see who's right.
Casey, John, Rahul, I don't think we can wait till next year. We have to do it earlier in the year. So what's really amazing for me for this panel today, right now, and thank you again for showing up when you did. I don't know where you are geographically, but thank you for being here today. It's really interesting. You had the opportunity to look at some of the panels yesterday or some of the early ones today. I mean, they'll all be available on YouTube later on tomorrow. But what you guys have brought to this panel is a sense of, hey, actually, this is an interesting era to be in, but let's pay attention to some of the reality factors, right? Which is control, crypto. We have to be aware of the politics, subtle as they are, around these things. But we also have to pay attention to the developing technologies and engineering problems, as well as the opportunities that may exist and tying certain things together. It's just, and I think from Casey's point of view as being an investor and John's point of view and Rahul, I mean, I sort of start to see that there is a lot of froth and enthusiasm in the market, but we do have to pay attention to some of the underlying factors that do exist. And I think we're missing that, the realism of sovereignty, of control, of politics, and the number of people who are getting involved. So I really appreciate the time and effort and the knowledge that you've put behind this. And I really look forward to keeping in touch with each one of you and progressing this and seeing how it happens. Get you just, let's pay attention to what's going on, and you know, hopefully we'll have found companies that are going to be they're going to be great, and we can bring them onto our platforms, or pay attention to some of the problems that we're going to face and some of the friction points.
Absolutely.
Casey, thank you so much.
Of course.
John, thank you so much. Rahul, thank you so much.